Hello and welcome back to lesson 42 of class. We are in the spiritual section, the last S before we move into other languages like class A and talk about emotions. But for lesson 42, we're going to discuss how to fight bad with good. Now you have light and dark, good and bad, but there's different definitions or understandings in people's minds when it comes to that terminology. So I decided to use the words bad and good since last time we used light and dark. So, what is bad? Because if you wouldn't want the thing that you are doing to others to happen to you and yours, then would that be seen as bad or karma? I mean, think about it. If what you were doing for, let's say, 5, 6 years to somebody or more, right, have that done to you, right? Would that be a bad thing in your eyes, or would you just look at that as karma, right? Because what goes around comes around, right? It's like a circle. It's like a circle. If you ever seen that movie, right? I think it was The Hangover, one of them, right? But anyways, I mean, think about it, right? Because if you do harm to others, well, you can ask them to stop. You can force them to respect you. There's many pathways one can go down, but after enough times, when other people find out, what the fuck are you going to do? Right? I mean, are you going to look at it as bad or as karma or whatever? I mean, I'm out here in the park, right? And if people come and, whatever, I mean, I got people all over the place. Everybody say hi. So when we're doing this, if things go on, especially in this philosophical class, if time reveals everything, then is anxiety even real? Or is the mental health movement a scam? I mean, think about it, right? Because if you read the journals and publications, it takes several years for things to get well understood, right? If you get diagnosed with anxiety, what triggers it? Is it because you're drinking too much coffee and you have too many shots of espresso and you sit on your ass all day and you don't work out? Or is it because, well, you actually have a disorder, right? Are you a nosy Nancy and you're because you don't know something, it triggers your anxiety? I mean, think about that for a second, right? Because most people in today's day and age need to have some type of news feed in their life, right? Thanks to social media. Let me fix this real quick. And thanks to social media, people's attention spans have gone out the freaking window. And people are like in everybody's business. I need to know this. I need to know that. I need to know this. What's the next thing? This is not interesting. Swipe up, swipe left, whatever the case may be. And their focus and attention has been, well, altered, which is a good and a bad thing, right? Because if you pay attention to social media, you have these Mandela effects. And then people are going to just play along with it, right? Because let's face it, if you're able to get away with the Mandela effect and now somebody brings you to the hospital, they think you have Alzheimer's or dementia, and then when they do their fact checking, it's not like they're going to go very far or do a holistic research or treat you like an individual. They're going to put you along amongst the group, look at past notes because they're lazy, and then just make an assumption based upon what everybody else said, right? Not even doing their own observation, not even remembering what they learned in school or what they learned in the medical journals. Hold on, let's do a mic check real quick. All right. So, I mean, think about it, right? Just with anxiety alone, is that real? Is it fake? Is it, something that people play with? Like when people like to act tough or act hard or use a fear card or know something about you, like, oh, you don't have a flight response? Cool. I'm going to paint you into a corner until your fight response comes out. Then I'm just going to call you crazy. So on and so forth. Or I know you have a flight response, so I'm going to treat you a certain way so that you just leave every single time because that's what your end goal was, right? Are these seen as bad things or as good things? And if you're getting anything out of this video so far, go ahead and smash that like button down below and don't forget to subscribe and follow me. Now, let's move a little bit forward. We're going into point 3, right? So time is money, just like perception is reality, right? Because think about it. You go to work for about 8 hours a day, if not more, but it also depends if you get paid hourly or if you're a salary, right? If you get paid salary and you work 10 hours, well, you work 10 hours, you still get the same paycheck. If you get paid hourly, you work 10 hours, you get paid a little bit more. right? So it all comes down to certain things. I mean, think about how attorneys get paid. Do they bill you by the minute? Do they bill you by the hour? Or do they just say it's going to be one easy lump sum of this and then the rest is yours? Or do they do a percentage on top of the hourly charge, so on and so forth, right? It really comes down to the structure of the contract, right? Same thing happens in business, life, and everywhere else. But if time is money in that aspect and perception is reality, if I held this up and said there was coffee in it because, well, it looks like a coffee cup, it has the top of a coffee cup. I mean, if I take a whiff, it kind of smells like coffee, but then when I open it up, something else is inside because you didn't care to look further, utilizing the doctor's analogy earlier, right? Because they were lazy. If there were coffee grounds in here without taking off the top, but something else was in here, the coffee grounds would mask the scent of normally almost anything, right? And it also restores the balance within your nose or your scent. Have you ever went into, let's say, a candle shop or something like that, right? And you always see like coffee beans on the side, right? It's to recalibrate your nostrils so that you can smell the other scents in the room, right? Most people don't understand this, but they do utilize it, right? But it works in different areas, right? Because if perception is reality and this right here, a dollar bill, right? This right here apparently is worth something, right? It's worth one. Why? Because it says the number one, right? With an O around it or a little thing around it or whatever the case may be. But this is worth $1, right? But if I went somewhere else and told you this was worth $20, would you believe me? Or would you think I was crazy? See, most people aren't informed on certain things, so they just stay blind to certain things, right? So when it comes to perception is reality, is that $1, well, if you study, foreign exchange and everything like that, the currency exchange in different countries, well, then $1 could be a lot of dollars somewhere else, right? And that's the perception is reality that I'm referring to, right? Because the currency looks one way from a different country, but it's worth more somewhere else. Why is that? I'll leave that as one of your homework assignments to find out. Now, point number 4, people will use your weakness against you or a fabricated weakness so they can still have control and power over you. So what's the defense with this, right? Well, first you have to know and do what's known in business as a SWOT analysis, right? Your strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities that you have in your life, right? What are your strengths? How many languages do you speak? What are the names you say? Well, how do you call or reference yourself? What are your weaknesses? Do you tend to speak out loud? Do you tend to be quiet? Are you extrovert? Are you introvert? Are you a loud talker? Do you project very loudly or do you talk very low? So, things like that. And then, of course, how are you in an environment? Are you the type of person that needs a lot of money in your bank account to have a good time? Or do you not need a lot of money? You just need enough money to get to the location so that you can have a good time because you actually enjoy dancing and you dance to forget because, well, that's the best thing in the world is to connect with another human being, release those endorphins and make a connection and possibly make a friend, right? But most people are scared or shy or whatever to break the kinesthetic barrier, right? Kino meaning touch. I learned this from Eric von Markovich, also known as Mystery in the pickup community. Highly recommended. Definitely go check him out, as well as Neil Strauss, who is a friend of his who wrote a book, a couple books actually, but wrote a couple books and worked with him. But it talks about the social dynamics and the psychology behind it. When I was younger in high school, I mentioned social dynamics to people and they didn't necessarily understand what that meant. And it wasn't until years later that it became popular. Same thing with social media. When I got into social media, most people made fun of me. They said I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, that's a fad. It's going to die. This, that, and the third. Blah, blah, blah. And now everybody's making boatloads of money on social media, right? I went over to, who was it? Brian David Hill, right? If I remember his name correctly. He's a dentist. And this is when he was very early, just moved to the Charlotte area and things like that. And he had a house party, and there was a lady that was in advertising. She's like, "Oh, do you guys do pre-rolls?" And I said, "No." Granted, I barely understood what pre-rolls were, but I was like, "No, we just shoot live like QVC and sell shit. Like, that's how it's done." She thought I was crazy. She was like, "Oh, there's clearly more stuff that I need to learn about in marketing, blah, blah, blah." Like a couple days or weeks later, apparently she told Brian that I was lying. But if you go on TikTok now, they have live shopping, right? And whatnot, and all these other apps, right? Crazy how that worked out, right? But she thought I was the one that was incorrect or in the wrong, right? Like most people would normally do, because they're quick to judge and they're, well, lazy. They don't want to understand. They just want to collect a paycheck, right? So how do you defend this? Well, understand your strengths. 2, understand your weaknesses. 3, understand the threats that are around you, because if those threats tend to attack your weaknesses, you must fortify your weaknesses. Meaning, if you're weak at something, let's say you want to learn Spanish, go learn Spanish if you're weak in Spanish and they're utilizing that. Let's say you're weak in technology, learn technology. You could go to Class Central or LinkedIn or YouTube. Hell, you could use ChatGPT and Google Gemini to be your own personal instructor and give you a whole outline with links to free sources to learn how to utilize technology for yourself, right? And now your weakness isn't that weak anymore. It becomes more fortified, kind of like the callus on your hand, right? Even if somebody social engineers you and they happen to say a nickname or a name of yours, right? That's fine, because you understood where it came from and you understand that they are sharing information, because sharing is caring, and you know who they work for. Because how the hell are they going to get that information if they were not listening to either a technological electronic device or they're a fucking mind reader, right? They have to use technology. That's 1. They have to use electronics or electricity. That's 2. Get rid of those 2 things. Do something else in private. And then, of course, if they do hear or say something that you only know, then you might want to look at the NSA. But that's a whole other thing. I'll let you guys watch the movie Enemy of the State, where I think it was one of the guys in there. He's like, the NSA could read the freaking hands on your wristwatch if they want to. So on and so forth, right? So think about that. And if they can do that, they can hear a bunch of other things, right? They don't need that other stuff because they could just tap in, right? Anyways, so then, of course, you also have to understand the opportunities that you have around you, right? Let's say you are getting attacked. Well, you have to look at who's the friendlies on the field and who are the foes on the field. They will reveal themselves. Like, I had this one Ballantine police officer come over to me in the wrong location, and he thought it was my house. And he's like, "Oh, you got a nice house here, so on and so forth, etc. You know, we got a lot of cops, blah, blah, blah. It would be a shame to lose this." And I was like, "This isn't my house. Are you on the take? Because you sound like you're on the take. You sound like you're crooked, or you're trying to use fear or intimidation." And that's the first step down the wrong path, especially since you're wearing a badge and in uniform, right? Please don't be a fucking disgrace to it. My grandfather was a cop, for crying out loud, right? May God, rest his soul, so on and so forth, keep him safe. But I mean, even still, you really gonna say that to somebody? Think about it. Unfuck yourselves if you're watching. Anyways, let's move forward. Once your opponent has an advantage or sees you twitch with a certain speech, they will use that even if you let them, because people are like children. You ever give something to a child and they just like want more? It's kind of like a magic trick. "Oh, I want to see more. Oh, I want to see more. I want to see more. I want to see more." Or all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, do this, monkey boy, blah, blah, blah. Perform for me. Do something for me. Make it fun and interesting, etc." Right? It's very interesting, right? Because people are like children. They just want to see how you're either going to respond, how you get upset, etc. But when you reverse the roles or you switch it up, it's different. Harvey Specter says in the TV show Suits, don't get mad when the other side starts playing this game the same way or starts playing the game, right? Or pushing back, right? Most people will stand there and take it because, well, it's whatever, right? I'm supposed to do that. No. Push back, right? I mean, hell, when I was in the Marines, we made an oath to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. So if you're on the take or you're fucking crooked and you're operating in or outside, well, then I also had a paycheck to collect, right? And don't even introduce other people. Well, I can't do it because we can't operate here. So let's get somebody from Germany or something like that to assist with this situation. Now it's an international offense. That's maritime law, not common law. And if you don't know what the hell you're doing, you're going to get into serious trouble. Now, granted, these are not allegations. These are just things that have happened. And you can question whatever individuals you find if you find them with the correct alias. But because people are like children, they will keep picking. Oh, I'll stop. And then they keep going. Oh, I'll stop. And then they keep going. Oh, I stop. And then you slap them in the face and they say, why'd you do that? Because you didn't stop, right? I said it multiple times. Why didn't you listen? I said it over the span of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, going on 6, etc. Why didn't you stop? What were you so curious about? Next point. Turn a negative to a positive. So growing up in New York City, we dropped the N word, yo, what's up, blah, blah, blah. But it was different because we flipped it. Whereas in the South, it's taken as a actual negative term to mean ignorant, right? But most people aren't ignorant or dumb. They're just uninformed. And that came from an attorney. But if you also listen to things like Pitbull and his motivational speeches and things like that, he's always saying flip a negative to a positive, right? So how do you do that in verbal martial arts? Well, if somebody's attacking you, and you've seen several movies, 9 times out of 10 you'll see this in older movies, either like The Three Musketeers or like military movies or martial art movies, where somebody who is not trying to have a confrontation, but somebody's instigating, they'll make a sarcastic remark. Or they'll try to make it into a lighter situation, right? And what they're trying to do is switch the negativity into the room into a positive state. Because if you can get people to start laughing, it changes the whole situation, even psychologically, right? So you can now, once everybody's in a good state and that one person is still putting out negative energy or negative tones and pitches, well, it's going to rub them wrong too. And then when the cops show up and they're on the floor because they don't know what the hell happened, and everybody says, what happened? Oh, that guy on the floor started it. He was being an asshole. He wanted to see exactly if this guy was going to be a dick and beat the crap out of him, because an asshole and a pussy both get screwed by one, right? Just say. Excuse my language. I had a mentor, or an online mentor, named Gary Vaynerchuk. If you don't know who he is, he drops way more curse words than I do on YouTube. But being that he has boatloads of cash and we have freedom of speech in America, according to the Constitution, I'm going to utilize that along with things that I learned that are okay to say. I mean, think about it. If I was coming at this from not just an educational point of view, because in the beginning of this, I did say that this was a philosophical class, but I need you to understand something, right? Most people don't understand the first time, or they pretend not to understand the first time. So you have to break it down Barney style, and if that doesn't work, you have to either elevate your voice, lower your voice, or tweak the brain by using taboo language. And if you ever look up Sigmund Freud taboo language, it would go into curse words, because, well, that's a part of science, right? That's a part of psychology and sociology and how cultures interact. When you go and meet friends from different countries, you go, what are all the curse words, right? Oh, how do you say this in this language? How do you say this in that language? How do you say this in Portuguese or Spanish? And so, it's one of those things where if you don't understand that, or you've never done it before, do your research, get experience, go out in the world and have communications. Don't be scared unless you put yourself in a situation to be scared, or you don't have the finances, because you have to save money, pay bills, taxes, whatever the case may be, because somebody put you in a compromising position, leveraging their power, or whatever the case may be, however you want to go about it. Now, let's move on. Using good things for bad. So I'm going to make another reference to Suits. There's an episode where Harvey, Mike, and a detective do certain things, And they say sometimes good guys have to do bad things to make the bad guys pay, right? And I always looked at that and I was like, well, that's true, right? Because although you may be a good individual, if somebody slapped your mother or your sister or your children, I'm sure you would do bad things to that person to make them pay, right? Or if they threatened the lives of your niece and nephew or your family members, who cares about yourself? But they start threatening people, you might do bad things in order to let them know don't do that, right? Kind of like saying stop, but then you have to slap them in the face a little bit or call daddy and daddy punches the shit out of them so that they learn a lesson, right? Because some people are hard-headed, right? Their brain gets calcified. The plasticity just leaves. They're not willing to not just look through the window, but go outside, walk through the fucking door and meet somebody, right? Ask questions instead of hiding in the shadows, right? Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, so on and so forth. Why don't we try to figure this out so that you can get yourself out? Why don't you tie the end of your hair to something that can hold your body weight and support you, and then you just, you know, rappel on down, so on and so forth, right? Instead of letting down your hair to let people in. Go outside. Don't be scared. So what happens when violence and people threaten children? I said gloves come off pretty much, right? You don't threaten children, especially those that are below the age of 5 or 8 or 10 years old, etc., or put them in certain places because you're either trying to groom them, train them, or teach them something. I understand everybody has their methods, but when you start to threaten a person's family or children of the family, well, then that's a problem and it will be rectified any which way, shape, or form. I mean, how would you feel if you were a judge or a detective or a police officer or a bailiff or an attorney? What would you do? Or a first responder? What would you do if somebody did something to threaten you because they didn't like the way you did something, said something, or whatever, and then they threaten your family members? What would you do? And realizing they used you like a chess piece during the whole time, would you not get upset? If not, maybe your head's not in the right place. I know I would. Just saying. Your morals could be real flexible at that point. So if family gets involved and betrays you, send flowers. What do I mean by this? Well, if your family members betray you in a certain situation when they should have known better, well, don't give them the opportunity to betray you again, right? Send flowers. Meaning, yeah, it's great. I got to start distancing myself, etc., because, well, you were supposed to have my back, be in my corner, etc. I was trying to look out for your health and everything like that, and you just kept screwing me over. So either somebody with power told you to do something, to play a little game, and you thought it was interesting and fun. I don't care. But I need to start distancing myself somehow, if that makes sense. Now, next point. When the system that controls you and everyone else tells you something, listen. What does that mean, right? Well, a lot of people say, oh, the system, the matrix, this, that, and the third. But yes, if you ever played a video game like Assassin's Creed, Fable, Final Fantasy, there's always these like hidden things around, right? Like imagine if there was like a little note hanging up here, right? And out the whole matrix, I went and I saw the note and I grabbed it and it said, do this, 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 and this, right? Because it's tangible. See, digital stuff can be manipulated and cause psychological effects, or it could be part of psychological warfare or psychological operations. Something that's tangible, like a book, paper, etc. It's a little bit harder to manipulate that. You understand what I'm saying? Because digital electronics, and we're going to get into that in a second, but all that stuff could be manipulated, and then if you were to try to look back or whatever, you can't, right? Because it could get tweaked, it could be on a timer, it could do whatever, right? So think about that. Next point, learn to see past the fog and the smoke. With a lot of deep fake videos out there and everything else, with DARPA technology and things like that, which I'm going to get into in the next point, you have to learn how to see past the fog and the smoke. Now, if you talk to military personnel, they talk about the fog of war, so on and so forth. But if you ever played the game Call of Duty, right, you throw smoke out there to cover everything, to create a screen. But what happens if you have thermal imaging, right? You can see heat through the fog or through the smoke. So you know something's there, you just currently can't see it fully, physically, the way you are normally used to, because the smoke is in the way. So you have to use technology and other devices in order to view it, right? So learn how to see past certain things, right? If you don't understand a word or you don't understand something, don't try to fake the funk, right? Or, try to BS your way around and say, I don't know, and do your research. Now you can have the application, Gemini or ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, all this other stuff. Hey, what's the etymology of this word, right? Meaning the history of the word. Where does it come from? What is the actual meaning? Where does it stem from? What country? What language, etc., right? Dig deep and you'll figure something out, maybe. Remember, there's a wise phrase that goes, seek and thou shalt find. But you have to know what you're looking for. You don't want to be standing around like Jack Sparrow with a compass in his hand that could point you to whatever you want, but it keeps spinning because you don't know what you want. So, as I said earlier, understand how technology can be used against oneself and learn about it, right? So, obviously, there's DARPA. If you don't know about DARPA, they're the Advanced Technology Department of the military and government. Should definitely look at that, because the analogy I have here is like DARPA technology is like Wakanda technology. So, if you've ever seen Avengers and you know Wakanda, well, then you can kind of get a synopsis or an idea of what I'm referring to and the things that are possible, right? Imagine if Wakanda and Iron Man had a baby and gave birth to an organization. My understanding is that would be DARPA, right? Pretty sure there's some other cool shit in there, but they won't let you see it because it's probably classified or not ready to be released to public because it's not understood yet. But, I mean, definitely take a look into that. Now let's talk about the acronym SOAP, right? So the acronym SOAP, and I got a lot of this research, not only based upon my own research, but utilizing platforms like I mentioned earlier, and then going into other locations in order to, well, make sure that it stood correct, unless digitally they were manipulating something. But, I mean, if you have access to books, then you'll be fine. Any Barnes and Nobles or whatever could, guide you in the right direction. So, let's talk about the acronym SOAP. Well, when you hear somebody say, yo, use SOAP, it depends on what they're saying, right? Because they're trying to get by with regular standardized language, but used in an acronym, it could stand for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan, right? This can be used by both the medical community, psychologically, or in the intelligence community, or in the military for psychological operations. When they say the word SOAP, they're normally going to clean and scrub everything to make sure their tracks are clean, and whatever they did, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, hopefully doesn't get left behind, right? So in Intel, it could stand for soften up, pacify, or manipulate, whatever the case may be. So if somebody says, do I have to pacify you again? Punch them in the face. No, I'm just kidding. But remind them of the movie The Pacifier with Vin Diesel, and maybe they'll get the understanding. Or cover their tracks, erase evidence, launder data, so on and so forth. They can mask their intent, right? Or reinforce the washing of a subject's beliefs and do it, repetitively over and over again, right? So that it sticks, right? Now, these are some tactics that you can now, well, first, I would definitely strongly say research, understand, but then you can start to understand, if you were to backtrack throughout all the lessons in here, how to utilize this in your own personal life, right? So let's continue, right? So we're getting down to the last 2 points here, but I want to touch on these, right? So, just based upon my own personal experience and the experience of others. So, hospitals and faith groups can use tools like what was mentioned earlier, especially if they run outreach programs. So, social marketing techniques for behavior change, motivational interviewing helps form treatment plans, etc. Right? So, they talk about mental health a lot nowadays, and if they're messing with the mental health space because, well, they get a cut or whatever the case may be, or they fabricated and orchestrated this whole thing for specific individuals that have vulnerabilities that they're exploiting because, well, if you don't see the news or the media, we're kind of hurting for cash right now. And apparently the government shut down and they're trying to redo the budget. So if hospitals are hurting for money, what rules won't they break morally or ethically in order to make more dollars, more of a profit, right? If you heard, you know, uh, person that was running a hospital walking around with investors, and it's like, oh, for each person here, no matter what, we get about $1,300 to $1,800 per person, and if they have insurance or they're duly covered, we make even more, and we keep them here longer for specialized treatment or to run extra tests because they need money. All right, but if they don't have health insurance, they'll get rid of you real quick. Think about that for a second, right? Where's their due diligence process? Where are their ethics? And, well, what would they do if they were in that situation, right? I don't know. But I'll let you guys do your own research and get your own understanding on that, because we have to learn how to fight bad with good, right? And the only way to do that is to understand when something bad is actually happening, right? So, what are some warning signs of unethical psychological operations or manipulation, deception, etc., which are other terms for psychological operations, right? So, you have emotional coercion, the fear-based framing. Now, remember earlier when I said if somebody knows you don't have a fear mechanism and you go straight to fight, they're going to utilize that against you, right? So they might have a fear-based framing situation to trigger you, or a flight mechanism because they know you just leave and they really want you to leave. They just don't know how to say it, etc. They'll use these psychological ploys in order to, well, move you around the chessboard, as one would say. Right? Suppression of alternate viewpoints, right? So I don't know if you remember in earlier videos, I discussed that I had a friend that was from Germany, and I wanted to see if, well, her phone with Google's, search results would pull up the same thing on that I searched on with my phone, and it didn't. It was so weird. Then I found out she wasn't a citizen and all this other stuff, right? And her phone and all this other, and I was like, that is so interesting. How come the same information isn't showing up, but I'm able to be specific? So, like, let's say if I looked up illusionist.com, right? Illusionist.com will pop up. It's a magic site. It would pop up on my phone, probably in the top 10 first page. Maybe it would pop up on hers, maybe not. Maybe because it's not really popular over there, but it should be a generic search because it's sharing the same Wi-Fi IP address, router, so on and so forth. So the history should bounce, should it not? Not even just based on that, but also based upon things that it hears, because we all know that when we speak, we also hear and see advertisements based upon what we're referring to. So if people, are trying to be subtle or whatever, and now that I mentioned, psychology and all this other thing, I would not be surprised if I see a BetterHelp commercial or a St. Jude commercial or whatever the case may be, just because, well, technology does listen, right? And not only does it listen, it listens to respond, and that's called advertising. And then, of course, targeting people without consent, right? Because there has been advertisements, especially on YouTube, that I have blocked, and magically, somehow, I see a same company, similar advertisement show up. So let me block this person from doing it. Let me block this. Why is it still showing up? Who's allowing it to show up? What is the system trying to say or imply that I can record and then play back in court later? Think about that. So, if you have found this lesson to be fascinating, interesting, so on and so forth. Mind you, this is lesson 42, not another part to something else. I want you to really go back into the first couple lessons of spirituality, because spirituality to me is the understanding of all the spiritual books and how they make interweaved connections with each other, building upon each other, right? Because they do build upon each other, right? And as they build upon each other and you read them with some type of understanding, you can see not only the history, because history is bound to repeat itself, but the history that have occurred, the technology that was there, and it's a documented journal or library of books, depending on which one you're using or reading, that tells you what happened in the past. So is there anything new under the sun? Or is there clues in the book that you haven't seen yet because you don't understand the etymology, metaphor, and entendres that are used? So, this is the end of lesson 42. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put your comments down below. If you have something negative to say, that'll be great. You know why? Because it tells the algorithm to send it out to more people that have time in their day to watch the whole video. And it keeps going on, boo-boo. So please, by all means, leave the negative comments, leave positive comments, leave questions, but don't forget to like and subscribe. So until the next lesson of class, my friends, take care. Mwah. Bye. Peace.